Welcome to The Joe Cohen Show. Join me as I share my experience with biohacking and invite top health experts to explore the latest technology, supplements, research, and resources for optimizing your body and brain. Hey everyone, I'm very excited to have Dr. Maloof on again to the podcast. For those who don't know, she's an MD who provides health optimization and personalized medicine to high-achieving entrepreneurs, investors, technology executives. She's pioneering a new sex therapy program, the Adamo Method, which is a pathway to resolve sexual dysfunction, strengthen relationship bonds, and improve sexual wellness. That's why I have her on the podcast today. We're going to be talking about sexual topics. So if you're a little squeamish, then put your earmuffs on. Since 2012, she's worked as an advisor, consultant to more than 50 companies in the digital health, consumer health, and biotech space. She's the author of The Spark Factor, is on the frontier of personalized medicine, digital health technologies, biofeedback, assisted lifestyle interventions, psychedelic medicine, and science-backed wellness products and services. All the yummy things that I like. And yeah, very excited to have you back. And let's get into it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's always a joy. And I can't believe I think we've known each other for at least a decade at this point. We've both started our careers long time ago. And I remember you were in New York and I was in San Francisco, and we were both getting into this thing called biohacking. And it was the very beginning of an industry. And it's wild to think about how much has changed in a decade and how much this concept of biohacking is like even morphing into medicine, like the concept of biooptimization, longevity medicine, health optimization. It's really, I think we're hitting like an actual moment where people across the world was what I'm noticing. Everyone's starting to really figure out that this is not just about your personal journey and getting better health. There's a whole movement happening. There's so many doctors I know all over the world building longevity clinics, building biooptimization clinics. People are starting to put cold plunges and red light therapy in their homes, H spots in their homes. Everyone's got their water purified and their air purified. And we're just living in this really exciting time. And I have to credit you. You were one of the first companies that was like, I'm going to be about hacking my health and I'm going to teach everyone in the world how to hack their health. And you've done a huge service to a lot of people. So I want to thank you for what you've done for the masses. It's been really cool to watch.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate also that you've been on the frontiers for all this time. And I didn't even think about it. We met each other. We never even met in
We
person, which
never
is nuts
actually
also.
met.
But
I
we
know.
we knew
Feels
each
like I've
other's,
known you though for a long
right?
time.
100%. We knew
Yeah.
each other for 10 years. And when we were both getting into it, we weren't even both new at that point. We were like, you already knew your stuff at that point.
Yeah.
Like you're already
Yeah.
doing a lot of stuff. And so was I.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess we've just been seeing how the rest of the world is coming on board.
Kind of
It used
catching
to be
up.
like really weird 10 years ago. If you were to
Oh
wear
my God.
those glasses, you were like a weirdo.
I know. I think like when you were like even just getting your genetics, right? I remember one of my clients I had to get his genetics tested and I needed the whole exome and it cost thousands and thousands of dollars. And I had to negotiate with the lab and be like, this is for research purposes. This is not for clinical purposes. Even though in the process of getting the genetics test, we discovered a specific genetic condition that like hadn't even been published. And it was just like, it was so early to the even genetic space. And that was one of the first things that you did for people was help people hack their genetics. And nowadays, like you got that Gary guy on, I met him once, Gary Vayka or whatever. He's on all over Instagram talking about methylation, making methylation a cool thing. Like we've been talking about methylation for a decade. This is not news to
Right.
us. It's like
Yeah. I
old
mean,
news.
that whole thing, that his whole program checks only 5 SNPs.
I'm like, this is not
It's like people are
enough.
like, this guy's Newton. He discovered gravity here. I'm like, we've been talking about MTHFR since 2011 here. And like, this guy's
Yeah,
literally checking 5 SNPs, which
I
is
know.
nothing. We're looking at 200 million variants now. And
Oh my
our
God, are you
software,
serious?
yeah, our software has gotten way better, more accurate.
I
We also
really need to run mine
validated
again.
it
Every time I
on,
talk to you, you give me another round of like analysis, and I always love that about these podcasts.
but the genetics has gotten like 10x better
Okay,
from what it
cool.
was. Yeah, the
That's
software has
amazing.
gotten amazing. We validated the software also. We have a bunch of papers that validated it based on millions of people. Our technology is the best in the world. So we've looked at There's very few companies that actually do it. So most of the companies, the consumer companies that you see, they're scams.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not only is it not validated, but they're not even using the methods that are potentially it's just like way back in it's just
Mm,
garbage. And then the problem is that people can't really determine what's garbage. A lot of these companies just don't invest. Gary Breck is selling 5 snips. He's making $10 million a month doing it. Why should he invest any money selling legit product, right?
yeah. There's still
Um,
so much education that people need to understand the role of labs and genetics in their lives. Like the thing that really I struggle with is I've got friends that go into Function Health, and I'm like such a fan of Mark Hyman. And I think what they're doing is amazing and they're raising all this money. But all these people are going to these companies to get all this information. But then they come to doctors like me and they're like, what do I do with this information? And it's, wait, where was the person at the company that was helping them make sense of it? And there's still, I think there's always going to be a role for health coaches and like longevity doctors and people to help contextualize and make sense of information. And that's one of the things that's really
Absolutely.
missing
I
from a
still
lot.
do. I just got into health coaching, back into it actually, and
No way.
a little bit,
Yeah,
like
it's always good to have a few. I don't see a lot of clients at a time. I really like
yeah.
I'm really high touch, but I'm like low numbers with my practice. But
Same here. I for me, I like it, and I pick my clients like very.
yeah,
So for one of them, for example, is Liver King. Just
no
yeah, yeah,
way. That's does he let
yeah,
you
yeah,
say that online or like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
anything?
He's very public about it. Otherwise, I wouldn't say. I spent 3 weeks with him. I lived with him for
Yeah,
like 3 weeks
no way.
on his ranch. Yeah, and then I went to Mexico with him, and then I went. So I really got to know him well. He's actually a really good guy. I like him.
Yeah.
Like
I
he's
look, I think
yeah.
there's a lot of people in the world. There's like kind of two camps of the world. One is you've got to be natural. You have to have no help. And there's another camp that's I want to live and look awesome and I want to work hard and I want to tune my body up like a car. And some people have cars and they just want their car to run. Some people have cars and they want detailing, right? Everyone's constantly asking me, how are you 40 years old and you look like you're in your 20s? Like I get hit on by like men in their the 19 to 25 range these days is like pretty funny. But it's because if you optimize health and you really invest in your health, like you get so many benefits from it. And I think Liver King gets like a lot of flack because everyone's like, he's not authentic, but it's hey, he's selling products that are fantastic products. Like I've tried his products, they're not bad. But yeah, of course, if he wants to use some HRT, so what? Did he ever claim that he was completely natural? I don't think so.
He actually did at one point, but I think that's where his
Oh,
flack comes in, that he
that's where
claimed
it came
at
from.
one point he was natural, and now but the thing is that for me, I don't determine if somebody's authentic by that. First of all, I don't get along with people who are not authentic. I just
Yeah,
don't. They don't like
yeah.
me, I don't like them. I just can't be around them. The fact that it's just that look, this is everybody's got their thing that they don't wanna share with the world. They're just he does just like you know what I'm saying? It's just okay, he lied, but everybody lies in some area, right? Nobody always tells the truth. And for me, that's not like the thing. I try to tell the truth as much as possible, but still,
I think I'm too
that's
honest.
yeah, I'm
I'm way
probably
too
too honest
honest.
too. But look,
It bites me in the ass all the time.
very few people are like that though. And
Yeah,
I think at the end of the day, but I still think he's a very authentic person. If
yeah,
you like I was with him the whole time. He actually lives everything in his lifestyle. He
yeah.
believes in everything he says. He's like very much into everything. He wants to do good in the world. So as far as he also wants to make money, but as
I
he's
don't think
like
there's anything wrong.
very
I don't think
authentic. Yeah.
I think there's this big question these days. There's a really great book by Andrew Wilkinson called Never Enough. And it's really all about the journey of an entrepreneur to a billionaire and his realization that almost everybody with money feels like there's never enough, but the real job is to keep giving it back, right? Is actually to take the job of giving away your money, which is a whole other job. But there's this big question. He's constantly arguing with his girlfriend at the end of the book about whether or not it's a good thing or a bad thing to make money. This is like a total tangent, but this whole concept in our country of like money is actually becoming, it's really sad. There's like a whole bunch of people that think making money is just a bad thing and that it should all just be socialism. There's a whole bunch of people that are like, wait, I like business. Business is great. Like I like being a business person. And there's a lot of tension right now in America. It's one of the biggest challenges of being here right now is the political tension.
Yeah. The thing is, what I consider not authentic is when I went
Yeah.
to San Francisco and everybody's, yeah, I'm doing this AI digital cloud startup on how to make more efficient ice cream and I'm doing it to save the world. No, you're not. You're doing it to make money. Let's be real.
I think you can't motivate yourself to do hard things like being an entrepreneur unless you both are passionate about the product you're selling, because otherwise you're not going to be authentic in the selling of the product. And you have to have enough drive and will to turn a good idea into an actual machine that can make money, because otherwise you're not going to survive. And so I think you have to have both. You have to have both the drive to make money, to frankly pay your employees and pay yourself, because if you don't have any drive to make money, you're not going to survive. But you also have to have such a drive beyond the money to love what you do, to keep you motivated when it gets hard. And I've been launching a company in the last 6 months. And I'll be honest with you, it's really fucking hard work being an entrepreneur. Like, I've been an entrepreneur for a decade, and there's both I love the fact that I make my own schedule. I live wherever I want. I travel whenever I want. I work with whomever I want. It's such an absolute privilege to be able to have three businesses as a woman in this world. But it's not without incredible amounts of it's a lot of work. There's a lot that goes into creating a new idea.
I would say stuff within the health world is definitely more people are it's more of a passion thing rather than
Yeah.
just make money because not always are the health businesses the most lucrative. And it's usually that's why I got into it. It was a passion thing, wasn't
Well, both
to
of us
make
got
the
into it
most money.
because we wanted better health. I remember when we
Right.
first
But that's
met,
over the passion.
I didn't want to be, I was working in the hospital, and I was like watching my attendings get diseases that were like, I had this one attending, her lymph nodes were popping out of her arms. And I was freaking out. I was like, this woman is going to work and she is clearly sick with cancer. And I was like, I'm going to get sick if I stay in this system. I'm going to get sick and I'm going to get old. Cause I saw myself and I was like, I'm not looking younger, looking older, working this hard. And I was like, I want to be healthy and I want to get healthier and healthier. And I think that there's something to this idea of optimizing health. I don't know how to do it yet, but I got really lucky and I left my residency and got a job and met some doctors that were very committed to health optimization before it was even a thing. And they
What
taught
year was
me,
this?
this was 2011, 2012. Yeah,
Okay.
2012. And I was like, I can't work in the system, but I need to make money. So how am I going to do this? And so my first job was this thing called MetaMed, and we were doing personalized medical
I
research.
remember that.
And the second job was I started my own medical practice, and then I started my own consultancy. And so I was concurrently doing, honestly, so much work for so many other people, because that's how you actually, like, a lot of young people don't realize this. Anyone as successful has done a shitload of grunt work for years before they even got treated like they were even remotely intelligent. Like, you've got to pay your dues when you're young. And frankly, if you're a doctor, you are 10 years behind the money making system, because you are starting your actual career when you're 30. So it's actually not an ideal thing to go from medicine to entrepreneurship, because you're just frankly financially behind. But I was so committed to optimizing health. And frankly, I was so lucky to meet these doctors that were taking care of billionaires. And I was like, oh my God, this is a job. You can actually take care of their health and get paid for it. And then, oh my God, I can learn how to do this. And that's when I met you. And I was like, everybody was talking to everyone at the time. There was such a small little seed of people that were doing this. There was Dave Asprey, there was Ben Greenfield, there was you, there was me, there was Rhonda Patrick. And everybody was just like, we knew we were doing something special, but we knew that it was like crazy at the time, because it was called biohacking because it was going around the system, because you couldn't actually use the system to do the things that we wanted to do because the doctors wouldn't pay for it. Now, and as I predicted, there's the two separate systems. There's an entire consumer driven cash based health optimization platform of the
Right.
internet that has made it possible for people to get genetics and get labs and get supplements and get hormones and get peptides. And I met a freaking 22-year-old guy who beat obesity with peptides and exercise and nutrition. And he's helping to manage one of my clients. He's just her assistant. And it's amazing what young people are doing younger and younger, because they're just like, they don't want to end up sick and chronically diseased. And at the same
What
time, go on.
what kind of peptides do you take? I'm curious.
Okay. So I had a concussion in 2020, and I ran my labs and I was like, oh my God, I am like really low on growth hormone and I'm really low on thyroid hormone and thyroid hormones, TSH. thyroid
Do you
stimulating
remember the
hormone and
numbers?
thyroid hormones. I have to go find them, but they were low. They were frankly, it was central hypothyroidism from from that concussion. You can literally throw off your hypothalamus by getting your head hit. And so I was like, "Oh, this is why I've been feeling like garbage." So I started taking thyroid hormones and I started taking Pemarilyn at the time, which really did make me feel like I was 18, but it also made me break out like I was 18 because like it is an insulin like
Mm.
growth factor stimulating peptide. So I did that temporarily and then I just went straight back to weight training and just exercise and nutrition. But then in the last year, I've had an intense year. This last year has been my last few years of just starting a company have been absurd. Really great years of my life, but I've pushed my body probably harder in the last 3 years than I have in a long time. And so I started taking BPC 157 because of some gut issues I had developed. I started taking thymosin beta 500. This is also known as the Wolverine protocol, but I was working out pretty intensely. And even when I wasn't, if you get sick or injured ever, which I had some sickness and injury last month, thymosin beta 500 is a fantastic tool for just healing. I ran out of BPC 157. I did try GLP-1 inhibitors briefly after getting COVID, but let me tell you, having extraordinarily low blood sugar because of a peptide was a miserable experience and gave me panic attacks. I would not recommend that normal weight women use these things for the last 5 pounds because my experience is that you're going to have your blood sugar so low that you're going to have a panic attack. And that happened to me. And I was like, screw these things. I do not need to lose the last 5 pounds. I just need to be healthy.
There was
But
there was a
that
girl
was,
that's so funny. There was a girl I dated that wanted
yeah,
to she was, like, pretty thin, but she's, "I need to lose 5 pounds. I'm thinking of taking the GLP-1 agonist." I'm like, "No, no, no.
don't
Do
do
not
it.
do it. Don't do
There's
it."
a great supplement called Kalo Curb from New Zealand that I just came across, and it's based on the hops plant, and I love the hops. I love hops in general. Like it's such a cool, basically hops extract. I don't know if this plant has this mechanism, but if you actually get hops extract, it does increase oxytocin, which makes you feel really calm and lovely. But this is specifically designed for appetite suppression and GLP-1 inhibition as a supplement. So I do recommend that instead of GLP-1 inhibitors for women that want to lose weight because it does
GLP-1
inhibit
activators.
appetite. Activator, sorry. That's
Yeah.
right. But I do think it's important though for women to also recognize that there's just a lot of unnecessary. I mean, like, you saw the South Park episode, right? The
Which one?
movie, South Park movie, you gotta see this. It's basically all about Ozempic, and it's about all these women that are going to drug parties to shoot up their Ozempic, and they're, like, all using black market Ozempic, and it becomes this it's just, like, it's one of the greatest things I've seen in a while. It's so funny. But
Oh
I
my
remember
god.
seeing a bunch of friends of mine in Austin that took various GLP-1 activators, and they ended up getting so skinny that their faces looked so gaunt
Oh,
that they looked
wow.
old. So,
Yeah.
I'm not convinced that you look younger and sexier if you're skinnier anymore. I think that a lot of people actually need to gain weight.
So, actually, I sell a resistant starch that activates
Oh, I need to
GLP-1.
try this, by the way. Will you
Yeah,
send me
yeah.
some? Will you send me some?
Absolutely.
I'll put it on Instagram.
Deal.
I've been really wanting
No,
to
but it
try
really
this
it really
because
does.
I know that
There was a
you're
study
saying it
there was a
helps with
study
sleep, and that's why you started it?
No,
Or
no, no,
was it
not
for
necessarily. No, it wasn't with for sleep. So I did it for food sensitivities. So there's actually,
Oh.
yeah, there's a bunch of reasons why it's good. One is food sensitivities, the gut microbiome,
Mm.
cognitive function, mood. I guess it could technically help sleep by improving mood, but I wouldn't say it's like a sleep supplement. But then for me, it never was about the weight loss thing, but
Yep.
actually it's known that fiber in general is a GLP-1 activator, but out of all the fibers, like you can look on ChatGPT or look it up, but resistant starch is the number one in terms of GLP-1 activation. And then out of the resistant starches, this is the one that doesn't have all those potato lectins and other shit in
Oh,
there, the green
nice.
banana shit and the green
Yeah.
all those lectins. So you can actually take significantly more of it because otherwise you're gonna get brain fog and bloated from like a lot of potato starch, raw
Yeah,
potato starch.
exactly. Do you put it
So
in
you can take
smoothies?
yeah, absolutely. So you can take more of
Yeah.
it. And there was a study done in 2024, just recently actually, um, that they used this exact one and they found that 90 grams of it. So I
Mm,
take half, I take 45 grams, but 90 grams of
gotcha.
it, people lost 2.8 kilos in 8 weeks, which is huge. It's very similar to It's even more than what Ozempic did. That was Ozempic is like 2.8 kilos in 12 weeks or something.
That's what,
So
at least 6 pounds or so?
it's almost, yeah,
You could divide it morning and evening too.
correct.
I haven't done like a proper detox in a long time. And Josh Mason, do you know him? He should be on your podcast. He's amazing. He and I met a long time ago in the Bay Area, and he's like a detox expert. And I was thinking to
Okay.
myself, if I'm going to freeze my eggs this year, anytime you're trying to do anything fertility related, you really want to detox your body. And everyone's like, detox is bullshit. Let me tell you, I feel awesome on the detox. It's rare. Like normally when you hear about people detoxing, it's like herxing and feeling like crap. But I had a pretty decent baseline to go into this detox. And I'm taking like methylene blue and taking electrolytes and B complex liquid supplement. I'm taking digestive enzymes, lots of organ complex, broccoli sprout extract, charcoal, this weird thing called enterogel. I'm taking
Enterogel, I haven't heard of
NAC.
that.
It's like a Russian binder. I'm taking sea moss and bladder wrack extract for the extra iodine. I'm taking colon cleanser. But there's these things called Zen Cleanse, this company. And I'm supposed to do 2 of these Zen cleanses. And then I haven't done a castor oil cleanse yet. Apparently, it's like you drink a bunch of castor oil. I'm nervous about that. I'm just doing all this to experiment and to write about in my newsletter. But, and then I have yet to do a liver flush. I don't think this one requires a liver flush. I am skeptical of liver flushes personally because I think that this whole idea that like you can just flush out your like gallbladder is just nonsense.
But
But it's fun to experiment with the body and see what happens
first of all, I take everything that you just mentioned every day.
every day. I'm
Except
detoxing
the
all the time.
activated
Yeah.
except the activated charcoal, because the only reason I don't take that every day is because I have to
You
take it
don't want to
away from
bind
my
up all the
supplements.
supplements. Yeah.
Exactly. So I take my supplements 3 times in the day, and that it's very hard to get it at the exact time that it's 2 hours before and after, so it's
Yeah.
I don't know. So I'll take it once in a while, but if I eat fish mainly. But,
Yep.
other than
I'm
that, I
starting to
take
eat a lot more
everything.
fish. So I'm going to start doing, I think you doing chlorophyll and charcoal, but you don't want to bind up all the minerals in the things that you're eating.
Yeah, I have a
It's just,
very different take of detox though.
tell me more. What's
Um,
yours?
so first, in the past 2 years, the way I do things has been a little bit different. I'm
Okay.
much more data oriented than I was before. So now
Yeah.
I just look at the data and
Yeah.
I could find from the lab tests exactly what somebody needs to do, like what's going on, what does somebody need to
Yeah.
do. Whereas before it was I look at symptoms, lab tests, genetics, these things combined. But what I found was it's actually been a game changer now because
Yeah.
now I know I test like 350 to 400 lab markers, and
I test
every
so
lab
many
marker,
labs.
yeah, every lab marker has an optimal range,
Mhm.
right? And my thing in the past 2 years is how do I get every single lab marker in this optimal range? I become an expert at how to manipulate my lab markers essentially.
Same.
I like to look at is, let's say we talk about detox. You have to measure what are you trying to detox exactly, right?
I
Well,
traveled for a lot in the last 2 years, so I was exposed to enormous amounts of jet fumes and jet fuel and just all these chemicals from travel. Airplanes are filthy. And I noticed moving to Jackson from Austin, just getting out of cities, my MTBE levels were somewhat high, and I didn't have high heavy metals, which thank God. But one of the reasons why, like, is what sometimes so I have friends of mine that are like serious biohackers that even are more advanced than me. And one of the things that they have basically made very clear was if you intend to freeze eggs or have children, you really just want to do a detox as almost like a prophylactic in order to optimize your fertility. And there's a ton of, and I've been doing a lot of research into fertility. And there's so many endocrine disruptors in our environment. And I'm not saying I can remove all these from my body, but I can do at least some work on trying to neutralize things. So broccoli sprout extract actually does have literature for helping to remove gasoline byproduct derivatives from the body. That was one of my biggest concerns. NAC just upregulates glutathione. And then
I guess my thing would be the way I would do it now is I would, instead of just talking, like instead of me just saying, okay, I'm going to detox, I would say, what am
mhm,
I trying to accomplish here? So I would
yeah,
measure a very specific marker. So let's say MTBE, whatever. That would be an
yeah,
interesting marker. I've never tested that. you measure that, and then you say, okay, let me start doing something and see if this goes down.
Well, so I did a company called Clockwise, right? It's a fertility epigenetics test. And they actually do measure endocrine disruptors in the body, chemicals. And I think I did that test a year ago or 2 years. I did it a year ago, then a year later. And then I've been doing it yearly, really, just to see what is my toxic burden? What is my epigenetic age for my fertility? And so I do these things periodically in order to get these baselines, and then I'll run these experiments, and then I'll run these tests and see, are these things that I'm doing making
Oh,
a difference in these
that's amazing.
outcomes?
That's
Yeah,
exactly how I would do it. Yeah,
yeah.
that's incredible.
It's
And
funny you
have you found
mentioned.
work?
I'm gonna find out because I'm running a ton
Okay.
of labs. I
All
have
right.
an entire table of labs to run, which is exciting. But it's funny, like I do a lot of telemedicine and I do a lot of labs on my patients. But I also do a large intake. I have a huge qualitative intake. It's 60 pages of questions, of which I've converted finally into a digital questionnaires. And I think it's really important to not just look at the numbers, but to also look at the qualitative history. And it's the combination of the omics approach to optimizing of health. It's you got to look at genetics, but not just genetics. You got to look at expression. You have to look at not just expression, but also like a person's complaints. What are your health complaints? And then you'll be able to come up with a list of problems, a list of labs to order for these problems that maybe you missed in the first round of labs. And then you're tracking what are these interventions that I'm doing? And then what are these outcomes? So I've recently taken like the allopathic model and applied it to optimizing health and done this systematically with myself and my clients for over a decade. And I found that a lot of practitioners just aren't ordering enough labs. They're not, and because they can't afford to, a lot of people just don't want to pay. But these labs are so vital for your capacity to make informed decisions. And but it's really evidence-based biooptimization. It's not really, I don't even know if we need to be, the words are just semantics at the end of the day. But the reality is that for me, at least in my practice, there's always a combination of this entire system I just described. But now I have this entire knowledge base of human connection and human relationships and how important it is to understand the biopsychosocial model on top of the biological state the person is in order to understand how a person becomes dysfunctional or even balanced. And it's really a 360-degree approach to a person's life. I used to be so focused only on data, only on history, only on supplements, labs, nutrition, fitness, sleep, stress, all those things. Now I'm really looking at what are the drivers of your imbalance and your dis-ease. It's not just sometimes it's frankly just there is actually just a disease and I have to fix it. And then a lot of times I've noticed is people are having these ridiculously complex and difficult relationships in their work life, in their home life, and that's actually driving a lot of the imbalance. And this whole area I didn't even really pay attention to until the pandemic when I woke up and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm missing this like super important part of health called human relationships. How did I miss this? Like, why?" And it's because it wasn't taught to me in medical school. Like, we weren't taught. I basically gave myself a psychology PhD on my own on my free time. I started reading textbooks for psychologists. And I was like, oh, how come my psychologist never worked with me on this stuff? I never once had a psychologist ask me about my attachment style. They don't interview you and they don't ask you about have you had any trauma in your life and what are your relationships like right now? They just sit and listen to you. And I think now I'm a much better doctor because I'm not just looking at numbers, I'm also looking at context, both from a perception of who are the people that you're surrounded with? What is the city you're living in? Do you have a social network and social connection? And then on top of that, what is your meaning? Where do you derive meaning of life? Where do you derive your purpose? What actually matters to you? What is driving you? And so this is my sort of general theory of human flourishing is fundamentally based on energy metabolism as one pillar, which is energy production, and then energy connection, which is how connected are you into the environment of people and place so that energy is being ideally directed towards some form of meaning and purpose. And those sort of three things, it's really like the holistic model, is just it reinvented for a more empiric generation.
That's really interesting. And just the model that you presented with the symptoms, conditions, goals,
Yeah.
um, lifestyle, history,
Yeah.
genetics, labs. That's that in the new version of self decode. We actually include all that into the analysis to get a recommendation.
Oh my God,
Yeah,
I
so you
can't
could see
wait to go through
for
it
every
and try it.
recommendation,
I have this incredible air purifier that talks to me like a robot, and it tells me
of course you do.
ozone is projected in your area. What am I supposed to do about ozone in my area? What am I supposed to do about that?
Right.
But it does tell me that I'm living in a cabin in the woods and I'm cooking without proper ventilation. And I can see my AQI index go up to 200 after cooking a steak. And I'm like, shit. I'm like smoking a cigarette right now, at least 2 cigarettes. I need to go outside. I need to get a grill.
I
I
have the
should not
same
be,
thing.
you know? It's
Yeah.
really surprising. We don't realize that there's so much more knowledge now about our toxin exposure from these sensors in our environment. But going back to this model, I think the body really is fundamentally our hardware, but our human relationships are the programming. And that programming is going to have a huge impact on your health behaviors, on your health habits, on your relationship to yourself, on your relationship to how worthy you feel about getting healthier, about your level of shame that you carry about your body. And I'm realizing these are the pieces that I have had to really examine as things that can't be ignored anymore. And another thing that I do a big history on now is human sexuality. So I spent 3 years studying the science of love, which is fundamentally the sex drive, the romantic love drive, and the drive to attach. And when you understand how so much of human behavior is driven by these three drives, so
Yeah.
much of what we do is based on like the drive to have sex with more than one person so that you find one person that you have sex with a lot so that you become attached to that person so that you're more likely to have a baby with this person and actually stay together with this person and actually raise this child. And then on top of that, these social connections, these social relationships, and these familial relationship bonds are all huge drivers of longevity. And I think it's one of the most overlooked facets. Yet, everyone I talk to in longevity that is an expert, they all agree that human relationships are the one thing that everyone can hack for a longer life. And it's unequivocal. Even the small molecule people, like I was on stage with Alex Zavarantov, who should be on your podcast if he hasn't already been. He's awesome. I'm sure he's been. He's like, I know the human relationships matter. And he's studying small molecules for longevity. So I think that the problem with being early to a movement is that you're just not a lot of people are ready to optimize their relationships with their sex lives. But I think if more people looked at it as something as simple as like picking up a new exercise regimen, and yet it's like it's still so taboo to talk about sex because it's considered to be this like thing that you have to hide. I started studying love and I discovered this theory based on Helen Fisher's work. And that's when I was like, if I'm going to try to optimize human connection, that there's a lot to choose from. You could optimize romantic relationships, you could optimize attachment and family bonds, you could optimize loneliness, and there's all these loneliness companies. And then you could optimize for sex. And I was like, who's working on sex right now? Like, where's the innovation in this sex space? And I'm like, there's pretty much been female porn sites, ethical porn websites is like one innovation. I'm like, not going to do that. And then there was like OMGS, which was really cool because they created a whole website on female pleasure and they ran studies on it. And then Masters and Johnson created sensate therapy in the 1960s. And I was like, oh my God, this is a pretty old school method. Like it basically involves not having sex as a sex therapy. I was like, what about the things that happen when you have sex that are problematic? And I used to have pretty terrible sexual dysfunction in my 20s. I had
Seriously,
problems with yeah.
what
So
was
the
the,
way that you describe sexual dysfunction is lack of arousal or desire. So desire is lack of mental arousal. And then arousal is lack of like lubrication or erection in a man, right? Premature ejaculation is a problem in men, doesn't usually happen with women. But then
if it wouldn't be a problem
there's
because women
delayed
can
there's a
orgasm multiple
exactly.
times.
There's delayed ejaculation as well in men. And that is not really technically a diagnosis, but it can be a problem for some. There's anorgasmia in women, which
Delayed
is
wait, delayed orgasm in men? This means the
delayed
man just goes
ejaculation.
on for as
Some
long as he
men really
wants.
struggle to have an orgasm. Can take them like an
Oh,
hour.
okay.
And for some women, anorgasmia could be situational or it could be primary. So primary or secondary. Primary means that you've never been able to have an orgasm. This is surprisingly common. And then lack of orgasm. And then there's situational anorgasmia, which is even more common. Primary anorgasmia is not very common. A lot of women, the orgasm gap is like 68% of women have an orgasm during sex in a heterosexual relationship. 95% of men have an orgasm. So
Wait,
there's a huge
68% have an orgasm every time or just
every time.
once?
Or
Every time.
in a session with during sex, the
Okay.
chances of a woman having an
68%.
orgasm are like 68%, whereas it's 95%. And this is for heterosexual women. A lot of women are ashamed to admit that they're not fully aroused before they have sex. I think I was listening to this podcast about men, and it was like this man was talking about how men can't always control their erection. Women can't always control how long it takes them to get fully engorged. And we have analogous structures in our body. Like we have engorgement tissues in our vulva that men are never educated about. The actual clitoris of a woman was not properly mapped until 2005 by an anatomist. So we actually didn't even have a proper anatomy of female pleasure until very recently. And so we're living in a world where we're not teaching this stuff to young people. Kids, including myself, learn most of what they learn about sex through the internet, which involves a lot of very violent porn. And now we have articles and true. And now there's a lot of articles there's like articles in the New York Times about young women getting asphyxiated during sex because a lot of and that's what in porn, choking, you see all sorts of stuff. That's what turns people on. It's very primitive. And I'm not here to bash rough sex because I don't know if you've ever heard of the erotic blueprint by Jaya, but it's pretty game changing. And I actually am very inclusive of different sexual types. Like the erotic blueprint, everybody should take the test. And I'm not even an affiliate of her company. I should be, but it's phenomenal for just understanding what turns you on. And so there's four kinds of blueprints. There's the energetic, which means like they want to be teased, they don't want to be touched. They want as much teasing as possible before you even get close to them. And they actually can be turned
I
on
feel
for
like
like
that's all girls.
no, but men, I actually dated a guy who
Oh,
I could get his body to shake from 10 feet away just by using my energy. That's what he wanted. He didn't even want me to come near him until he was fully aroused and ready. And it was like he wanted me actually across the room to touch him energetically. Then there is the sensual
well,
type. I'm more of a sensual type. I like candles. I like scents. I like touch. I like taste. I like all my senses stimulated. I like
do you like
music. I
whispering?
like, dirty talk's great. It's fantastic. I adore that. And then there's sexual, right? Which I dated a guy who was sexual and he was like, he just wanted to have sex and he would just rush into sex. And it was like, I was not at all ready for sex by the time he was. And so it's painful for a woman to have a man who's rushing into sex when your body's not fully lubricated or aroused. It hurts. And this is a big problem, I think, because there's a mismatch in a lot of people's erotic blueprints. And then the last one is the kink. And it's people who actually want the roughest kind of sex. They want mind games. They want to play scenes. They want to have all sorts of BDSM experiences. And then there's the shapeshifter, which just goes in between all of them. And I think I'm part sensual, part shapeshifter. The point of this is that I didn't
The
even understand. I didn't
shapeshifter
even,
is like a
they
little
could
bit
do
of
all of them.
each?
They want
They could
all of
do
it.
all
They
of
want all of it. And I actually think I'm pretty much a shapeshifter. I can play with all of them, but I don't think that it's funny that like really she calls this the erotic blueprint because it's about eroticism, what turns you on, but it's also a sexual blueprint because there's this difference between eroticism and sexuality. Eroticism is what turns you on intellectually and emotionally inside your brain. Sexuality is how your body functions in a sexual context. And so we have a very confused world right now around sex. There's just so many political discussions. Like I could easily get canceled talking about sex and gender, which I won't get into today because it's just not necessary. But one of the things that we did at Adamo was we wanted to create like a sex education platform that would really give people a more of an empiric approach, a more of a scientific approach to optimizing sexual health. And that means improving sexual dysfunction, improving sexual satisfaction, improving sexual communication, improving emotional closeness, reducing sexual shame, improving passion and intimacy. And we measured all of these things in a study. And I was flabbergasted when we were able to actually prove that our program does this. Because I was like, oh my God, were literally launching this program as we were studying it. And I just had a hunch that it would work because the Aaron Michael and Saida Desilets, the brains behind the actual method, it was literally like 40 years of combined experience that went into this product. So I knew it was going to work because I was like, look, they've been doing this for a long enough time. It's not like it's going to just massively fail. The thing I did not expect, which was the most surprising thing of the study that we ran, was that orgasm quality improved in both sexes, orgasm frequency improved, sexual satisfaction went way up, sexual communication went way up, but sexual desire went down. And we have a theory on this because a lot of people are trying to solve for sexual desire. We think that what happened in our study was that people were so satisfied with their sex lives that they finally had a healthy sex life, which is kind of going from imagine you're like, you have an eating disorder and now you have a healthy nutrition. You don't actually have like intense, like I used to have an eating disorder when I was younger. I had all sorts of up and down cravings. I had emotional eating. I had a hard relationship with my eating. Now I literally just feed myself what feels good. And I don't even feel that hungry on a regular basis because I mean, I feel physically younger at 40 than I did at 30. I mean, by a long shot. And I think it's
You're
because of
40?
feeling, yeah,
Oh, you look great.
thank you. My labs actually look better now at 40 than they do at than they did at 30. So you
Which
can
one
age.
specifically? Which ones do
Oh my
you like?
God. I mean, I had fucking frank prediabetes when
No way.
when I left my residency. I
What
got a
was your
bad viral.
HbA1c?
It was like 5.6. It was 5.7. It was like, no, it
And
wasn't
now?
actually, it was my fasting glucose. So I put a blood sugar monitor on in 2014. My fasting glucose was above 100. And somebody pointed it out. There's a video of me on the internet at this is the very beginning of my foray into human metabolism. I was presenting at the Quantified Self meetup. And somebody said, Molly, do you notice your numbers? I didn't even know how to interpret my numbers. I had just started, it was just a presentation on, hey, look what happened. I'm a healthy person. I put this on my body. This is cool. I did not know that I had insulin resistance, but I had gone off of Adderall, which, by the way, Adderall massively boosts dopamine. So if you cut dopamine, that can actually alone, plus weight gain from not being on stimulants, I gained 5 pounds. That combination of low dopamine plus weight gain, plus I went off of gluten because it was causing me problems. And I started eating as a compensation for the lack of dopamine. I started eating gluten free foods that were made of flour. I started eating more sugar and I wasn't exercising enough. And then I got a really bad viral infection, which anyone who knows anything about infections, I mean, you can actually completely tank a person's metabolism from a viral infection. So I think it was a combination of many things that led to my insulin resistance, but I completely committed my life to fixing this and fixing health and understanding health from a measurable perspective. And I put a blood sugar monitor on two clients recently. One of them, she's like running hypoglycemic all day long. Like she's feeling like garbage. Her blood sugar is low. She is insulin resistant without realizing it. Another client, fasting glucose is way above 100. And I'm like, hey, you realize you're
What's way
pre-diabetic, right?
above 100?
It's 105 on her, like 105, 110. Like that's pre-diabetes.
The question
And
is, if someone has a normal HbA1c and a high fasting glucose, what does that mean?
it's still pre-diabetes. People don't understand that hemoglobin A1C is actually a terrible test for diagnosing diabetes and prediabetes. It's actually okay for diabetes. It actually should not be used for prediabetes. It is not a good test. I've run all the numbers. It is not a useful test for prediabetes. It is, you've got to put a blood sugar monitor on and ideally multiple times. You also need to get fasting glucose and fasting insulin. And so I had a client's wife she was struggling with gut issues, with skin issues, with brain issues I ran her fasting insulin. Glucose monitor, totally normal. Fasting insulin, 16. So in my book, you're insulin resistant with fasting insulin at 16. And
What
regular
what what do
doctor,
you think of this situation? Because my fasting glucose, I've optimized almost every marker. The fasting
yeah,
glucose seems to have not been fully optimized, but
yeah,
my HbA1c is pretty decent.
yeah,
It's 5.4%. It goes down to 5.1 if I take berberine, but I
yeah,
get some muscle pain from berberine, so that's why I
yeah.
stopped it. But then I use the fat glucose monitor, and my glucose is
Hmm.
pretty good the whole day. So it's pretty steady. And then my fasting insulin is 2, and my
Well,
HbA1c, my fructosamine are like is
so
also
if your
good.
fasting insulin is 2, that tells me you eat a low carb diet. So here's what happens in a low carb diet. A low carb diet is going to lower your insulin output. So you are naturally going to see blood sugar be a little bit higher. because of physiological insulin resistance. So what happens when you lower, your body will naturally want to hold on to every bit of glucose if you eat low carb. This is how your body would have been able to survive in primitive times. And it's not an abnormal thing to see fasting blood sugar gently drift upwards if a person is eating low carb, but you have to contextualize it and actually acknowledge what they are consuming, because I'm not as worried about a person with a fasting insulin of 2 as long as they're not flagrantly having these massive 200 milligram per deciliter blood sugar spikes. The thing that I think people struggle with when they eat low carb, and I have struggled with this, is if you are low carb, you actually should be monitoring what you're eating, because it's really easy to slip up and just be like, you know what, whatever, it's a special day. I'm just going to eat a bunch of carbs. You are naturally going to be spiking a lot higher than the average person, because you don't have your pancreas has down-regulated insulin production because it doesn't have the insulin stimulus on a regular basis. So you actually can't just naturally ramp up insulin. And that's what I would tell you, if you are a person that eats low carb and you are going to enjoy like a birthday cake or something, you have to walk after that meal. Like, I eat low carb, but I walk after meals that have higher amounts of carbs in them. And it's really not that complicated. You can completely mitigate these blood sugar spikes, but you have to be pretty vigilant, because it's easy to end up with these big swings if you aren't watching. And look, like, I also think that like my fasting, well, I'll be honest with you, like, my fasting blood sugar looked incredible. My postprandial blood sugar looked amazing. And then I got hit with a ton of stress this summer because a couple of my team members decided to go on vacation to Europe. And I had to take over a lot of responsibility. And I was like, oh my God, where am I? I'm like not being properly supported. And it's super sucked for me. And so my blood sugar, if you're not watching, you can literally see your blood sugar go up 10 points from just stress. And your diet hasn't changed at all. And so I do tell people, you can't just look at it's not just what you're eating. It's where you're living. It's how you're interacting with the environment around you. It's your stress levels. It's your social connections. It's the toxic burden. And if you are under enormous stress, you will see your cortisol levels raise, which I definitely know mine went up this summer. And I was drinking more coffee than I should have, which raises cortisol. And I think that raised my blood sugar about 10 points on average. And look, it's not going to kill me, but I just pay attention to it. And then I course correct, and I'm going on vacation I'm going to go do a speaking gig in Boston. And then I'm going on vacation for a solid week. Now, me on vacation is still me working like a good solid amount of time, but it's not me working full time. And anybody who's out there is an entrepreneur or an investor or somebody who works in a highly demanding job that requires significant amounts of regular stress. I see so much prediabetes in entrepreneurs, and it's so overlooked by their primary doctors. Like, this guy's primary doctor looked at his CGM and said, "You look fine." His fasting blood sugar is 105 to 110. It's like not below 100. That's prediabetes. There's 3 ways to diagnose prediabetes. One is glucose tolerance test. You take a shitload of sugar and you see where your blood sugar goes. That is not a good test for somebody who's low carb. You cannot use a glucose tolerance test on a low carb eater. And doctors do this all the time. And it's not accurate because of what you're describing with what's going on with your body. If your insulin is low, you cannot have a massive 70-gram glucose load and not have a huge blood sugar spike. You actually need to go on a higher carb diet for at least 4 days, if not a week, to ramp back up your pancreas's production of insulin before you can actually do a glucose tolerance test. So that's out the door. So, like, next thing is hemoglobin A1C. There's a lot of reasons why hemoglobin A1C can be useless. If a person has any aberrations in their hemoglobin levels, which I see anemia all the time in women, that's going to lead to an abnormal result. There's a whole other list of things I have in my lecture, Your Health Span Journey. I've got an entire lecture series I taped based on my course at Stanford. But suffice to say, I could go on for days of why hemoglobin A1C has flaws. And then the last thing is fasting glucose. And fasting glucose is only testing if your liver is good at mastering its insulin sensitivity while you're fasting. Some people have totally normal fasting glucose, but really crappy postprandial glucose because they have no muscle tone. And so I have a client right now, woman, 18.5 BMI. She is skinny, and she wants me to optimize her fertility. She's 42. And I'm like looking at her and I'm like, you got no muscle tone, lady. We got to get she's like, I know, my VO2 max sucks. And I haven't been exercising much more than walking. And I'm like, you have no glucose sink. There's nowhere for the glucose to go. So this is an example of someone who's got some peripheral insulin resistance and her blood sugar spikes above 140 pretty consistently because she has nowhere for the blood sugar to go. So this is why
Right.
muscles are so fundamental is you need them to soak up all that blood sugar. They are literally batteries, like battery packs. And if you don't have big solid battery packs on your body like you clearly do, your blood sugar has to go somewhere. It has to go somewhere and then it gets stored as visceral fat. And I think a lot of people it took me a long time to figure all this out, but we overcomplicate metabolism because it is not easy to understand for a layman, but insulin resistance is probably 92% of the American population. Most of the I don't know if it's frank insulin resistance, but at least it used to be 88%, now it's 92% of the American population is metabolically unhealthy.
Wow.
And that is a big problem. And there is a reason why our country is so sick and our fertility is declining and our mental illness is rising and our addiction is all over the place. Like our country is fundamentally ill. And it doesn't have to be that way. Health is not rocket science. We have access to technology like your platform, which makes it so much simpler than ever before to start optimizing your health, and yet people don't do it.
So you think that I just looked at all my numbers, my recent numbers, 5.3% HbA1c,
I think that's great.
100 fasting glucose, which again,
I
it
think
was
that's
an insulin
probably
of 2.
I guarantee if I put a blood sugar monitor on you, that fasting glucose would be lower before your actual lab test. So this is the thing that happens with fasting glucose that people ignore. They go to the doctor, they get their blood drawn. You've been running around all morning doing stuff, raising your blood sugar as it naturally rises. Unless you get that blood draw right after you've walked out of your bedroom, you're not actually seeing your fasting
I did do
glucose.
Yeah, I wore a fasting glucose monitor. I'm usually around 90. That's
See, this is
that's
what I'm
really
saying.
yeah.
This is the difference, right? Like a 90 on a blood sugar monitor and 100 in a lab this is why it's like labs. I don't know if I told you this, but before I became a doctor, I was a phlebotomist. So I learned
I didn't
lab
know that.
processing. I worked in a hospital lab. I learned about blood cultures, urine cultures, UAs, all the labs. I saw how everything was done behind the scenes. I went behind the curtain. And so I knew I have a very different relationship to understanding laboratory tests than the average doctor because I spent so much time studying them and analyzing them and also working for about 5 startups that were trying to optimize lab tests. So you can't just trust things blindly. You have to always contextualize things and you have to ask a person like, for example, if you exercise really hard for 2 days, especially the morning of your blood draw, do you know your lipids are completely useless because they can change? Your creatinine could be completely different. People don't learn the importance of following very strict protocol for labs. And so they get these tests back and they're like, what's going on here? And it's not always their fault. Sometimes it's actually the way the labs were drawn.
What do you
That's
like
why
to keep the lipids at? LDL or ApoB?
okay, so there's so many people arguing about where lipids
I know. What do you
and
think? Like, what's
I think it
your
really is,
take?
again, very dependent on your family history. So I have a family history, no heart disease at all in my family,
Oh, wow. Okay.
but I have dementia in my
Mm.
family and I don't want dementia. And so there's real evidence that a higher lipid level is actually better for brain health than a lower lipid level, right? Like you don't want to go
So
below
what's your lipid
150
level?
total. My total cholesterol is probably, let's go find out. I guess I could look it up. I think my total cholesterol hovers around 200. And the last year was actually really interesting. So when I lost some weight on accident last year because of, what was I doing? I was in Europe and I just lost weight because I was walking everywhere and I didn't mean to. Everything looked really good. And then I actually went on a vegetarian diet when I was dating this guy, which was a disaster. I did
Wait,
not,
how
my
long ago
hair,
was this?
this was like for 4 months last year. In 4 months, eating almost no
You went on a
protein.
vegetarian diet? I'm so
It
surprised.
it was look, I was living with a guy that
He must have been
was
really hot.
he was just really good in bed. But no, the truth is he was incredibly controlling and he refused to keep meat in the house. We had a chef. And so
Oh,
I was like, "Hey, I'm losing my hair. I don't feel I'm losing weight." So I ate tons of carbs and almost no protein and a pretty high carb diet, lower fat diet. And I was
okay.
surprised at how much weight I lost because basically if you're eating vegetarian and you're not eating a lot, you're eating 2 meals a day. you can eat carbs. Your carbs are going to rev your metabolism, but you're going to lose weight.
Right.
And I lost
For
10
sure.
pounds. Now, ladies out there, this was not good. I lost a lot of hair. I lost a lot of muscle. I lost a lot of hormones. My cortisol went up and my testosterone went down. And I lost my libido. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to look at this as an experiment and I'm going to see if I, what happens if I actually do this thing and eat this way. I had never been a vegetarian for even more than a month before. So I was actually impressed by how much it deranged my mood, my hormones, my arguably the relationship played a role in this. But I was really unwell vegetarian. I was not like I looked skinny and all my girlfriends were like, you've like never looked better. But I did not feel good. I felt very weak and very, very much like I lost my vital force. So my diet now is definitely got meat, definitely got fish, nuts, seeds, tons of vegetables, and then a little bit of grain. I don't do a lot of grain. I do quinoa, I do some oats, making sure they're non-GMO, glyphosate free. Oh, it's so important. Glyphosate's everywhere. So one of the reasons why I avoid grains is for glyphosate. But I do pseudo grains and I do ancient grains. And then I do a little bit of legumes, but not a ton. And then I do a fair amount of just like if I find like local berries, like I'm gonna pick some raspberries today, I'll do berries. But I'm not eating a large amount of fruit, like besides tomatoes and raspberries right now. But my diet's pretty pristine. I actually stopped eating dairy for a while and then brought it back in the last 2 weeks because I discovered this raw dairy farm in Jackson, and it's the most unbelievable dairy you've ever consumed in your entire life. It's like Israeli dairy. You know how good dairy is when you go to like Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and like all the dairy in all the markets is just like the best. And it doesn't give you GI upset or anything. What are your thoughts on dairy?
I used to be sensitive to dairy and then I reversed the sensitivity. Now I eat dairy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's really quality dependent, and I don't go near I really don't like conventional dairy because I do feel more sensitive to conventional dairy, but the raw yogurt here, the raw cream, it's like heaven on earth. Like, it might be it's like one of the tastiest things you can consume. One thing that really did help me heal my gut was optimizing my microbial diversity and doing that through exercise and through nutrition. People don't realize that your microbiome diversity is highly dependent on your fitness levels. And then also just living in nature. So just by being in nature, you can increase your microbial diversity. So I live in
Absolutely.
Jackson, Wyoming, and it's some of the most pristine nature in the country. And it's been amazing to experience just like what being around trees and birds and elk and moose and longhorn sheep. Like I live on an actual, like literal safari. Like when you drive through the elk refuge, it's just bananas. It's crazy to see the amount of animals. Like by January, there will be just herds of animals in this place.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So my last question is, what are your best sex hacks?
Oh,
Yeah,
sure.
what do you yeah, take me through some of the things that you find
Yeah.
people are
And the
having issues
so
with, and let's just get to I wanna hear all the hacks, the
yeah.
sex
Yeah.
hacks.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I would say the first thing that is really important is knowing and understanding yourself sexually. And I think a lot of people never even ask themselves, what turns me on? Right? If you're dating a new person, one of the most fun things you can do is actually there's like a list of kinks. It's really fun to actually find out what are you willing to experiment with in the bedroom? What have you done? What have you not done? What do you want to try? Just getting to know yourself. What turns you on? From like the most vanilla fantasies to the most intense things. What is your eroticism? And then I used to be so obsessed with Chia's work, which really did change like my sex life in my early 30s. Montauk Chia is fantastic, but he's a man. And so he's written a lot of his books have been written from a perspective of men. I learned from Saida Desilets that some of the things that I learned about optimizing my pelvic floor can be actually detrimental to women. And so if you overdo the Kegels and you overdo the microcosmic orbit and you only pull in and you don't push out, it's like going to the gym and like you're doing weight training, but you're only focusing on the flexion and not the extension. Anybody who does weight training knows that you're going to get way better results with your fitness if you're actually emphasizing flexion and extension, right? Same thing goes to the pelvic floor. Like I didn't even understand my pelvic floor anatomy, let alone know how to actually create the mind pelvic floor connection. So we have this practice called pelvic floor breathing, which is there was a lot of unlearning for me when I had to learn this method because I was so used to Kegels and pulling in my pelvic floor and breathing up my spinal cord with the microcosmic orbit that I didn't really know how to push out my pelvic floor. So when you do pelvic floor breathing, what you're doing is you're literally breathing in. You have two diaphragms in your body. You've got the diaphragm below for that's your actual diaphragm where you breathe. And you breathe in, your diaphragm expands. And so what you're doing when you're expanding your diaphragm is also trying to expand your pelvic floor diaphragm. So your body has this pelvic floor, it's holding in your genitals. And the more that you learn to push out when you're breathing, you're like pushing out, expanding it. You're actually directing energy and blood flow to the pelvic floor. So when you're breathing in, you're actually pushing out your pelvic floor. You're going to pee, but you don't pee. You're not trying to pee. You're just trying to push it out as though you were going to pee. And that what that does is it expands the pelvic floor like a balloon. And that it literally moves blood flow and moves energy to that part of your body and creates a brain pelvic floor connection. And your pelvic floor connection is actually where you get your arousal, your engorgement. It's where you get your ability to have stronger orgasms. You have more orgasmic control, you're more ejaculatory control because you actually have a mind pelvic floor relationship. Just like when you're bodybuilding, and let's say you're just going to the gym, you're not getting any results of weightlifting because you actually never learned to use your brain and connect it to your muscle. I don't think a lot of people have ever learned about their pelvic floor and their sexuality as though it's like a fitness thing, right? It's like a fitness practices that you can learn. So we teach people body mechanics for sex. We teach people how to manage weight for movement. A lot of things, like a very annoying thing that can happen to women during sex is their partner is just laying on top of them, suffocating them with their bodies. You have to manage your weight and the movement at the same time because that creates a better experience for the receiver. And another thing that we teach in the method is, which is very cool, is this concept called embodied consent. So it's really good sex if you feel safe. It's not great for a partner to feel emotionally or physically unsafe. A lot of people don't even know how to communicate what they like and don't like. A lot of women can't even talk about sex. So that is a big thing that we talk about in this program is you need to learn how to read another person's body to identify are they saying yes or saying no. Because not everyone's going to say yes or say no, but their body will show it through polyvagal responses. I'm sure people on this podcast listening have heard of polyvagal theory, but your body a lot of people have trauma that's unresolved. Like 20% of women are raped and 1 in 4 are abused as children. So chances of you interacting with a woman with sexual trauma are not insignificant. So it's really important for men and women to understand. I have had multiple men in my practice that have had sexual trauma. So it's not just women, but there's a lot of this happening. And so it's not a sexy thing to say, but you do need to be able to read a person's body if they are freezing or if they are shutting down or if they are resisting. You don't want to approach that. You want to actually take a step back and actually check in with this person, you know? Really good sex is safe sex. And a lot of people have been accustomed to sex in movies as being like if you actually look at romance novels and movies, like what actually women in romance novels want is they want to be taken, but they want to be done so with their consent. And that is the thing that's missing from a lot of great sex for people. So we teach a form of sex that's not about friction, it's actually about suction. And this is probably the biggest innovation that Aaron Michael pioneered. And he was one of the co-authors of this protocol and this method is when people are having sex, a lot of times what's happening is the person that's in the receiving position is getting penetrated by someone in the more active position and the giving position, we'll say. That's not always a good experience for the receiver, especially if they're not properly engorged or they're not properly lubricated. And so it can feel painful and uncomfortable and almost like you just want to get it over with. What we teach is actually the receiver can learn to actually breathe out their pelvic floor. So they're pushing out the pelvic floor and then they're relaxing it and they're literally having their partner slowly, they're bringing their partner in through the pushing out and the pulling in, pushing out and pulling in. So there's a suction happening. You're sucking in your partner with your body. And then same thing can happen, by the way, if you're doing anal sex for any homosexuals or people who are hetero and like anal, you can do this with your anus too. It's actually, if you learn how to have anal sex without pain, it's like an entire world opens up. Most people have never even thought about having anal sex that's painless. It's actually possible. It's mind blowing. And then there's the act, once you're actually in contact, physical contact, and penetration has begun, what we teach is specific hip mechanics where a person is either thrusting forward or twerking backward. And both the giver and the receiver can either be in the thrust position or the twerk position. So you're basically thrusting or reverse. We could even call it reverse thrust. So if you thrust together, that actually changes the contact of the penis and the vagina or the penis and the anus. If you're thrusting in opposite, that actually changes the actual part of the internal anatomy that's being stimulated. And so it's a lot less about the in and out movement, and it's actually about the up and down movement. And you're really focusing on how much surface area can I actually connect with this person with physically. That actually creates more sensation and more pleasure. And that's why we're getting these outcomes of higher sexual satisfaction because of higher rates of orgasm, higher quality of orgasm. And it's something that was like a revelation to me because I used to experience such painful sex in my 20s because I wasn't properly aroused or engorged because I had a history of sexual trauma in college. So my body was reacting in a polyvagal freeze. And so I would just not really have great sex at all. And then there's a whole other story around how psychedelics played a role in me healing my sexual trauma. But it wasn't until I learned the Adamo Method from Aaron and Saida where I realized that it's not that we're going to throw out friction sex. It's not like that everyone just says friction sex is over. That's not what we're saying. It's giving you a larger repertoire that you can play with in the bedroom so that it's not just about the same thing over and over again. And on top of that, you can apply suction to oral sex, which makes oral sex like 10x better for both the man and the woman by just ensuring greater amounts of connection with the mouth and the genitals. So basically, it's a masterclass of sex education that you never got. And you learn so much more than just these topics. These are the main sort of innovations in the program. And I have to say that it's just embarrassing, but the guy I'm currently dating is, have you had hour-long orgasms with anyone else? And I'm like, actually, I've never used the Adamo method with anyone else. I didn't have a partner that wanted to do it until this recent partner. So I am surprised at how much it has created a much higher capacity for orgasm. And I mean, there's a whole bunch of reasons why my sexuality at 40 is better than 30. But I do have to say that Aaron and Saida are basically Olympic level coaches for sexual health. And they are complete pioneers outside of the mainstream system. In fact, I would love to have them on your podcast because I feel like if you're interested in optimizing sex, like they are not woo at all. They're not tantra teachers. They're not spiritual gurus. They're literally just pioneers and innovators that have studied sex as a science and have been trying to research for their entire careers how to create a better erotic relationship with yourself and how to create a better physical experience during sexual contact. This is not something that unfortunately there's not a lot of innovators in the space. Like we are the only people I know that are creating programs like this. And the next thing that we want to build is a program for singles, but we're really focused right now on marketing the Adamo method and really teaching people that sex is not this taboo thing that you have to ignore until there's something wrong. And then you're in a couple therapy office where they have no idea how to coach you to have a better sex life. What it's about is like looking at your sex life as something that you can improve, like your nutrition or your fitness or your sleep or your stress or your environment or your supplements. We don't hack our sex lives, but we can do all these things to make sex better. So why aren't we doing it?
No, absolutely. No, those are some really good tips, and I need to. Yeah,
I'll give you an invite to the program, and then you can prepare for your. I would love to have Aaron and say it on your podcast so that you can ask them actual questions about the method.
let's
But I
do it.
think
Yeah, I mean,
I think we should do it. I think that'd be really fun, and then I'll do the resistance starch exercise, and then I'll talk about it on my newsletter. I lost 6 pounds without trying by just eating 90 grams of resistant starch a day. I'm totally doing this, by the way. I'm doing it. It's
that's
happening.
that's great. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah. It was Where can people learn more about it?
Okay, so
These
the
methods
website
and
is www.livingadamo.com. And our Instagram is at livingadamo. My Instagram is drmolly.co. And my website is drmolly.co. But you can also find me on X and LinkedIn at Molly Maloof, MD.
awesome. It's always a pleasure talking to you, Molly.
You too, Joe.
You're
This is the best.
interesting, pleasant. It's nice.
Thank you. I look forward to our next pod, and I can't wait to try your resistant starch.
Awesome, and we have to meet sometime. It's
Yeah, we
definitely
do.
67% of listeners aren't subscribed to the show, so please don't forget to show your support by hitting the subscribe button now. You'll not only be supporting the show, but also investing in yourself and your health journey, all while helping to keep us ad free.